Welcome back to the Critical Moves podcast. This is episode 90, and we're going to do something a little bit special with it being episode 90, which is the best games of the 1990s. Do you see what I did there, guys? I thought it was a really cool idea.
I didn't even get it.
Well, there you go. There you go. That says a lot about the US education system. But that was Joe. How are you doing, man? Are you good?
Good. I'm great, actually. Even though you just said that to me, I'm great.
I'm sorry. Adam is also with us. Hello, mate.
Hello. I'm great. I am. Thanks.
Do you remember the 90s?
No. No. As I said, like the games came to Poland 1 year or 2 years later. So I remember, in fact, I have a couple of them, and I played hell out of them because these were my first games in my life. So.
And Drixie's with us. Drixie definitely remembers some of the 90s.
Just a small part, nice. The rest of it was a blur.
The bits where you weren't raving in a field.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Sorted out for ease and whiz. Yeah.
Let's not talk about that.
Not that we condone anything like that. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Like I say, this is episode 90. I think that sometimes my mind boggles when I think that we've done 90 episodes of this and we're still going strong. As we said, today's episode all about the 90s for strategy games, which I think we can all agree was probably the definitive decade. It was really where we saw strategy gaming come into the fore. And there were some incredible titles that came out in that decade. So let's go to Joe first. If you think back, way back, 30 years, what stands out?
Game-wise? The first game.
Yeah, game-wise. Did you forget where you were from?
Well, no. I didn't know if you meant game or like themes. What are the themes of the 90s gaming? But
I mean, if you remember your first car or your first, who you went with to homecoming, then
I do remember that, but we'll leave her out of it. The game that comes to my mind first when we think of the 90s is Caesar 3. I loved that game. They don't really make games like that anymore, I think, really. Maybe I'm missing them, but Caesar 3 is a special kind of title. And like Pharaoh, all of those, what was that, Sierra that made those games? They had a type of game they made. And I lapped them up. I love those games. I played the stuff out of Caesar 3 and Pharaoh, whatever it was.
What kind of game was it? Because I don't remember that one. There was 270 approximately strategy games released in the 1990s. So if I miss one or two, forgive me.
It is basically a city builder with a tech tree that also had a bit of war, RTS type war to it. Like the battles and stuff were not grand strategy at all, right? Like pretty tacked on, you've got enough numbers, you can make it. But I remember there's this one mission where you become mayor of a town and they're like, okay, you got to prep. We think this Hannibal guy is coming, right? And so you've got to build up your little army, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, he's here. He surprised us. He crossed the Alps. He's here. And all of a sudden he just shows up with elephants and you have to fight him off with your little guys. And I remember when I was, however old I was when this game came out, I was like, oh, this is it. This was the peak. That was the peak of gaming right there when the elephants showed up at my gates, when Hannibal was at my little town's gates. So that game was fun. But they also did this thing where they had a lot of logistics, and you had to fill logistical needs in order for your little citizens to grow their wealth. And so you would fulfill logistical needs, and then they would build wealthier, more intricate little houses. And that really tickled something in my brain to watch their little houses get better. So
what modern game is it the precursor to?
The game is I can't really think of it, but Tim loves it. It's a simulation game that Tim loves. It's not Victoria 3, but it's another business sim that Tim really loves. Yes, Anno. I think it's got a lot of parts of Anno. Now Anno's much grander, right? But to me, there's a lot of Anno in it.
And have you played later games like Pharaoh and Zeus?
No, they missed me. I played Pharaoh, and I liked that. That had that unique system where the Nile would flood, right? And then your crops would be fertile, and you had to make sure that you gathered everything. That was really cool. But Zeus, I missed somehow. I would have liked that game. I learned about it much later, and now I just can only handle graphics so far back, so I can't go back and play Zeus, unfortunately.
Interesting fact is that I got Pharaoh, and I was too young to understand the rules of this game. So I just clicked like until the Nile flowed out. I was like, okay, I'm finished. But it looked really
It
cool.
ruined everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like how you can cope with it. Oh my god, you need to be so smart. And
I think the 90s was certainly a time for these like new experiences, weren't they, in games? So like I know I appreciate you say it was Caesar 3, so I imagine there was, because I'm not that stupid because I was educated in the UK, there was Caesar 2 and Caesar 1 before that, I'd imagine. But still, that series, it's like there's so many brand new experiences that came in the 90s. I mean, if you think of the major titles that still dominate strategy games now, or the major genres, Civilization started in the 90s, XCOM started in the 90s. You look at all the XCOM clones that are still coming out now, when we've got Star Wars Zero Company due out later on this year. They're still making XCOM-esque games. They're still releasing Civilization games, and these all started back then. So I do think that your memory is of something which was new and fresh, and which had never been experienced before. And I think that's probably why they're so appealing.
I think the main thing with the 90s really is graphics, the graphics improvements and stuff like that. Where previously, if you wanted to play, I guess, strategy games before that time, there would have been board games, right? And this is where it sort of shifted over from board games into computer games, became the main platform for strategy games. The main game is a little bit cheating because it came out in '89. The one that really got me into strategy games was Populous, which came out like mid '89, but obviously I would have been playing that in '90. Another game that really was influential for me was a game called Megalomania, which probably no one remembers this one.
I remember Megalomania.
Yeah, I absolutely loved that game. It's similar-ish to Populous, I guess, because you had like again, you weren't in control of the of your little people. It was another god type game, but obviously you'd send them out to mine stuff, and it was like crude sort of crafting. You had to like combine stuff to make better weapons and stuff, and it had, I think it was like, I can't remember, there was like 9 islands you had to conquer, and basically like the top level tech was getting nuclear weapons, right? And just that's the main thing I remember, just being able to nuke your opponents. But yeah, this is also where 4X games started, right? With aforementioned Civilization and Masters of Magic, which was a more fantasy-based version of Civ, and of course you had the 2 Master of Orion games. So, and of course we can't skip. This is where, like I said, the technology sort of caught up. This is where RTSs started. I don't think they were, well, they possibly were able to make an RTS, but I think the technology, the use of mouse rather than joysticks and stuff when it comes to computers, it just led towards RTS games, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people would call Dune 2 the first real or true RTS games. I think that aficionados will say that Herzog Spy was the first RTS game, which was released in the 80s. But Joe just pulled a face, which is exactly what people will be thinking when they hear that title, because it's so out there that people don't even recognize it anymore. But Dune 2 from Westwood is really where we had like the birth of RTS games as we know them now. It's still the same formula that carries forward now with RTS games. But then you had Dune 2, then into Command and Conquer, which I think is if you ignore Starcraft and Warcraft, because I try to, because I'm a Westwood boy, that's really the birth of RTS games. But who prefers Blizzard over Westwood, the straw poll?
Not me. I actually never really got into any of the Blizzard RTSs. I think I bought Warcraft 3 and I gave it to my friend because he wanted to play the Dota mod. That's how interested I was in those games. I was definitely more into CNC, really. And I mean, God, the explosion after CNC, this is like that game, I think it's just so influential. It's like, it was crazy the amount of RTS games that sort of came out after that. You know, you had the Earth series, you had, what was that, Kill, Crush, Destroy. Oh, there was just thousands. There was just thousands of them. It was like an absolute flood of RTS games after Command and Conquer came out.
I played both. I played a lot of Warcraft 3. I think you guys might kill me for this, but I think of all those games, Warcraft 3 had the most epic story. Like, to me, I felt like I was watching the longest movie playing through that game, right? And now Red Alert 2 had a great story, and so did Red Alert. Like, those are great stories, but I thought Warcraft 3 had the best story, but I probably preferred Westwood games on the whole.
I do think it's quite interesting because if you look at the legacy of StarCraft 2, which I think came out, that was in like the early noughties, wasn't it? I don't think that was a 90s game. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But like StarCraft 2 is still being played now. And
StarCraft 2 came out like the 2010s, didn't it?
Yeah.
Was it really that?
No,
yeah.
There was like StarCraft, and then I think the big one was Brood War, which was like, you know, especially in like places like Korea, was absolutely massive. Yeah, StarCraft 2 was 2010.
Yeah, StarCraft 1 came out like 1998, so
yeah,
that one barely made it.
But anyway, irrespective of the time period, so thank you for pointing out that out. Irrespective of the time period, StarCraft seems to still have that legacy. People are still playing it now. It's in esports and all this kind of stuff. Whereas I think that Command and Conquer, the original Command and Conquer games, kind of fell by the wayside. I mean, is that fair? Does StarCraft and StarCraft 2 have that legacy, which means that they are actually superior to the games that Westwood made?
I wouldn't say that. I would just say their popularity lasted because, like I said, the Koreans, StarCraft Brood War, which was the expansion, you know, that competitive scene just lasted forever. It was like, I think I would say Command and Conquer was probably more in the West, I guess. And, you know, with those sort of games, single player games, you're always looking for the next game to come along to play. Whilst, you know, like you said, it was the 90s was the birth of esports, and for that section of players, you know, you don't like want to play like a different game every year, right? If the game's that good, it's a platform, and that sort of kept that game alive. So I think this just coming from different angles, right? You've got your normal players on one side, and then you've got, you know, your multiplayer people who are playing StarCraft. I would say StarCraft was more influential for competitive play, yeah. But I would say Command and Conquer on a whole was, when it comes to like other games, other RTS games, is probably more influential, right? It inspired a bunch of developers to make a bunch of they wanted to make their own sort of spin on Command and Conquer.
Command and Conquer was for single player people, and the Blizzard games ended up being, I mean, you said they started esports for RTS, I guess, but really they started esports in general, didn't they? Kind of like they've been
no.
huge.
Quake.
Okay,
Quake
how about
started.
kickstarted?
No,
Can I say kickstarted then?
No, Quake kickstarted esports.
You think Quake is bigger than StarCraft?
I would say it started thing. I mean, it goes all the way back from fresh winning John Carmack's Ferrari, right? I think that was really the catalyst for esports, in my opinion. Maybe I'm biased because I spent a lot of time playing Quake in the 90s and early 2000s.
I spent a lot of time playing Quake recently.
I would have said Fresh was like the first person you would have thought of that a famous esports player. No, I couldn't name you a Starcraft player. I'm sure other people.
I can't name you any of them in any of the games. The only online game I've ever played is PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. So I haven't played any of these games we're talking about online, but I would bet if you polled people who are making these games now and said who inspired you, you're going to get a lot more StarCrafts than you are Quake.
Sure. I mean, in the strategy realm, yeah.
Guys, isn't it like basically there are the steps of evolution of multiplayer games? Because Quake was popular, but then I guess StarCraft was like a next step of being popular, not among only people involved in computer games, but in Korea, like the whole country was behind it.
Yeah.
And then the next step would be, I don't know, Counter-Strike, for example.
Or that's what I was going to say, Counter-Strike.
And the next step would be free-to-play games like League of Legends. And this is this moment that everything came to be,
well, again,
worldwide
that came
phenomenon.
from Warcraft, right? Well, because Dota is was a mod for Warcraft 3, right? So that lineage, even though that's a popular thing today, that lineage started back from Starcraft games, right?
So do we want to say that instead of saying Starcraft, we could just say Blizzard, really? Because Blizzard had Starcraft and they had the Warcraft games. That's where a lot of the stuff jumped off of, right?
But who curated the Dune 2 game?
Didn't he say Westwood made it?
Westwood, yeah, it was Westwood.
Yeah.
So because I read the book that in the first Warcraft or second Warcraft, they try to mimic Dune 2. So in fact, Westwood was the core creator of the whole genre.
Well, Warcraft also duped Warhammer. I mean, they took all of Warhammer stuff. So,
like StarCraft duped Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, they did. They took all their best stuff. They took from other places, which everybody does. But
one of the first games I played in my life was Populous, the beginning game. Have you played it?
Yeah, that was the third one. Yeah, and of course, this is where the infamous Peter Molyneux sort of started, right, with the Populous games. So that I absolutely loved that game. I think that was definitely like the first strategy game I sort of got hooked on. And as I mentioned, Megalomania. I had again, I was weird. I skipped Dune 2 and I skipped Command & Conquer 1. The first Command & Conquer game I played was Red Alert, and what I used to do on weekends, I used to take my computer around to my mate's house, and I'd stay there all weekend, and we'd play Red Alert against each other all weekend. Yeah, it's crazy. Back in the days, this was before the internet, kids. You had to like cart your computer around to your friend's house and use this thing called a LAN cable, cat cable, and connect your two computers together. Kids are like, what?
That's like the Halo parties.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never played Populous. I missed this one, unfortunately, and I've looked back a bunch of times. And I'm like, should I do it? Should I do it? Look at those reviews, but the UI looks so terrible.
Man, do it. It looked bad when it came out. It looked really bad.
Yeah, it plays very. It's not. I wouldn't even say it's an RTS game because you don't really have direct control of your citizens or the people. You're just influencing the land around them, right? I guess that's what God game is, right? But that's again that game spawned the whole genre of God games again. So I think this is what the thing with the 90s, right? This is where a lot of game genres started to get solidified, and I guess things sort of separated and went on their own way. Again, as I mentioned, 4X games started in the mid-90s, and your RTS, your God games, your city builder games. This is all really, I'm sure, like Al says, you can find maybe examples of before, but this is where these genres got solidified in the 90s. So I think the 90s is like a just really important decade.
Do you think that Dwarf Fortress took some from Populous then? Like you were saying, you sort of set the stage and then your people acted. Is that a similar sort of feel? Because, I love Dwarf Fortress, but I've never played Populous.
For sure. I mean, they do play different, but again, it's another God game, right? And I think Populous is definitely the first real solid, or at least the popular, where a lot of people were influenced. See, basically what you're looking at is what influenced other developers to make similar sort of games. And these are the key games: Civilization, Command and Conquer, Populous, SimCity. These are the games that sort of influenced other devs to go and make similar sort of games, right?
Yeah, we haven't even talked about SimCity. Did you guys play SimCity? I played that like you would not believe. I love that game.
Yeah, that was it's just really weird, right? I remember thinking, this doesn't sound fun, right? You're making buildings and stuff. Oh, boring. I want to shoot people, and then you play it and you absolutely get hooked.
Guys, usually what I've done is I played a bit, created a city, developed it, and at some point I was like, okay, this is the point. I turned on the cheats and I put like catastrophes on the city, and I watched it destroyed. This was each time I played it and then destroyed it, and always the same way.
Yeah, that was the same with Populous, right? You'd like start making earthquakes and mountains and volcanoes and stuff like that. So
somebody I don't know who, but somehow my computers in my middle school had SimCity 2000 on them. Somebody installed it on all the computers, and when the teacher wasn't looking, man, we were all building cities.
Oh, I had SimCity on my Mac at work.
Nice.
And that's what I would play during my lunchtime. That and Myst.
In my school, there was Wolfenstein 3D on PCs. So
nice.
Yeah, you shouldn't be playing Wolfenstein when you are like 8 years old, but it is what it is.
That's funny. That's funny. Now we won't talk about America's youth, but now there are things like Fortnite on the school computers and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, really?
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Jesus.
Well, yeah. Or they'll play it on I think they'll play it on their phones, maybe, stuff like that.
Another game I want to mention, actually, because we just had the release of a new version, is the Heroes of Might and Magic games, right? These came out in the 90s. And again, they're still being played today. And as I said, you've just had a new version release, and that's been really popular again. Did any of you guys play the Heroes of Might and Magic games? I'm sure you did, Adam, being Polish.
Yeah, it's like national anthem is like playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Like if you would get to World Championships this year, you would see us playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 before the game.
They put it in your crib?
Yes, exactly. No, but man, it was crazy popular in my country.
Are you basically born? You get a birth certificate and the key to Heroes of Might and Magic 3, right? Is that
exactly
what happens in Poland?
You need to name at least 9 units in order to pass your high school leagues. At least 9.
I've never even played it.
Oh my god!
I would definitely pick up Olden Era if you see it on sale, I guess. But the new Heroes of Might and Magic game, it's definitely it's definitely something.
When you asked about Populous being a game like you want to try it or not, I told you shouldn't because it's too old. For example, Tim played Heroes of Might and Magic 3 first time, and he told it's crazy playable right now.
I don't know if you can trust Tim. I think Tim is special. Tim was just talking about how much fun he had playing Civilization 2. Oh, I could not imagine going back to that game. He was like, no, I had this great game. Multiplayer, Civ 2. It was awesome. I was like, I'm happy for you, man. I can't do that.
Well, definitely don't go and play Masters of Magic then. that hasn't. The UI, it's still a great game, but the UI is a bit thing. Same with another one we haven't mentioned really is One I couldn't actually ever get into because of the UI, and it's something I'm so addicted to Quake towards the end of the 90s. I just missed so many games, but Alpha Centauri as well, which was kind of a spin-off of the Civ games, but it plays quite different, really. And yeah, if you go back to that game, the UI is just
just Civ in space, wasn't it? It was just Civ in space.
Well, it was on. It plays different though. It's just the thing is, this game, whilst it was really popular, it's never had a spiritual successor. Like, no one's even tried to attempt to. I think apart from Praxis themselves with Beyond Earth, and even they failed at it, right? Because that game flopped.
Did you guys play Civilization 2 or whatever Civilization was that was for? I don't know. Maybe I hallucinated this, but I have this memory that you would play that game, and then when you beat it, it was like, continue in Alpha Centauri. And I remember being like, what? And they're like, yes, Alpha Centauri is coming and you can continue there. And I was like, mind blown. Coolest thing little me could think of in my parents' basement was like, oh my God.
One of the win conditions was launching your spacecraft, wasn't it? So, but I don't think so Civ 2 was 1996. When was Alpha Centauri?
1999.
So
maybe they were developing.
Could have been.
Yeah,
could have been.
Or was there some sort of Civ 2 expansion?
Maybe it was just a fever dream, man. But
tell us in the comments, people.
It does ring a bell, but maybe that's the Mandela effect.
As I was saying, now I think 90s is just so many games that just influenced everything that's come out after, right? It's crazy to think. I can't think of another day. Well, when it comes to strategy games, it's definitely like, it's almost like the you see those Tree of Life or whatever, and it will start at the amoebas, and then it'll go up like a trunk, and then suddenly it'll spread out. And I think this is the 90s where everything sort of just spread out from that singular point, I guess.
Yeah, I think that developers saw the popularity of RTS games and other games, but I'm an RTS person, and I think that it almost seemed like if you look at like 97 and 98, there was like 60 strategy games released in 60 plus strategy games released in those years. It's like every developer wanted a slice of the strategy pie. I think that was really, I know we have FPS with Quake and with Doom and Duke Nukem and all that kind of stuff, but I think that everybody wanted to release a strategy game.
And this is where I've had this thing, and this started with RTS games. I hate that when a really popular game comes out, you'll suddenly have like hundreds of games that copy it. Currently, it's like games with deck builder games, basically. But my hate for this started in the 90s, where it was just a floodgate. Every game was an RTS. I think this is what caused the death of RTS, right? There was just so many of them that people just got sick of them almost. I got sick of them. I stopped playing RTS games after Total Annihilation because I was just bored of another. Oh look, it's another RTS game. Oh yeah. They also had like, some of them had such similar names. You couldn't like, there was like Dark Rain and Dark something else and Dark, and it's like, oh God, I just got so sick of them, and I stopped playing RTS after the 90s. Was there any can anyone think of big strategy games on consoles? Because I was never really a console player. I don't know if you guys can think of any.
Halo Wars as an RTS was released on the Xbox, and Supreme Commander 2, which wasn't in the 90s, but that was released on the Xbox as well. That was when Square Enix took the IP from Gas Powered Games and forced them to make a sequel, which was playable on console.
I was going to say, I think this was when they first started doing the dual releases, where they were like, we will give you some of these games that we think will work well. Because I know I played Shadow of the Horned Rat on like PS2, not on PC. And so we did get some. And to me, that game was huge. Nobody else played that. But to me, that game was like, I'm staying up all night. I'm doing this.
Yeah, and I think that is indicative of the popularity of strategy games in the 90s, because they were so popular. They were, I mean, Age of Empires was that released in the 90s? Age of Empires was as well, wasn't it? And it's one of the most popular strategy games of all time. They were so popular that people were like, well, how else can we maximize our sales? Well, let's release them onto consoles as well. But then they never transferred successfully. Other than Halo Wars, which I think was built specifically for the Xbox. But before we move on to later games, because I'd like to do that, there was something that I wanted to bring up, which I think is really fascinating. I was talking to Tim, the other Tim who's part of our team who's been doing the 30 minutes off videos. Drexy likes him because they like Formula One. Boring. So I was having a chat with Tim about Warcraft. And he said, "Oh, Bungie lost the license from Games Workshop to make Warcraft into a Warhammer game." I did fact check him, and he was wrong, but he was right as well. Bungie actually they actually went to Games Workshop when they were making Warcraft Orcs and Humans, as it was called, and they said to Games Workshop, "We would like to make an RTS game. We would like to use your IP," and Games Workshop refused them the IP. And I just think the way things work. Can you imagine if GW had said yes to that? Would we have had World of Warcraft, the breakout MMO? Would we have had this massive explosion of MMO games if we hadn't have had World of Warcraft?
Do you think it would be World of Starcraft?
Well, this is it. If you look at Starcraft, I mean, what are you've got the Terrans, which are the Space Marines, you've got the Zerg, which are Tyranids, you've got the Protoss, which are Eldar. So you've got the link to Warhammer 40k in Starcraft, and anecdotally, they asked for the 40k license when it came to Starcraft, and they were refused as well. But we know for certain that they asked for the Warhammer Fantasy license for Warcraft, and they were told no. So they made their own version, and from that version, they went on to make one of the most popular games ever, which is World of Warcraft. I just think I mean, maybe I'm just nerding out here, but I think it's fascinating that GW saying no to Blizzard for an RTS game went on to spawn. I mean, there probably was MMOs before World of Warcraft, but not to the extent that WoW had. They spawned this entire genre of games because GW said no, and I bet they are kicking themselves.
Well, the thing that I find weird about that is because GW seem to give anyone bloody license. There's been so many trash.
They were whores,
games, right? Exactly.
They were whores.
That's really weird.
If anybody wanted to make a Warhammer game, so I don't, because so when Tim told me that they cancelled it, I was like, that doesn't ring true, because GW just let anybody make games using their IP. But when I looked into it, it is actually true. So, but anyway, that's just a little aside. I just think it's fascinating how these things bend and weave and wind through history. Without GW saying no to Blizzard, we would not have had World of Warcraft, and therefore wouldn't have had all the other MMO games potentially.
Well, what's funny is they also came up with a Warhammer MMO later. That was actually pretty fun, but it failed, and it's now only found on private servers. But they went for it later and lost. But
World of Warcraft could have been World of Warhammer.
Yeah. Yeah, I played the Warhammer MMO. I played a lot of Cityware MMOs, but one thing we have forgotten to mention is when did XCOM come out? That was the 90s as well, right? This is another influential series that went on to influence other stuff. Also,
1994 was the original Xbox. The original XCOM was 1994, and then 95 was Terror from the Deep, and 1997 was Apocalypse. So all three of the original XCOM games were released in a 3-year period in the 90s.
Oh, I played them on PlayStation. The first one for sure.
I miss those too.
Why do you think? I mentioned the technology. Do you think that's just it? Why was strategy games just so popular in the 90s? Okay, the technology allowed it, but what was it for players to get into their games? Because you got this weird, like, I guess, like Also, consoles really well, especially in the West. I guess consoles. You had like the PlayStation, which was like 96 or something, got really big. But why was strategy games so popular, even more than today? I would say.
In my opinion, that's because of two things. First of all, in those times, there was Nintendo Entertainment System and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. They were popular, but they were considered consoles for kids, basically. And like older people had PCs. And when you look at the strategy games, I would consider the target of them to be older than the target of Nintendo Entertainment System. And second of all, it was before the PlayStation 2 came out, so the market was still more open to more, let's call them, robust games. And I basically consoles somehow killed the genre, I believe.
So yeah, so do you think console killed? Because strategy games is very much a PC gaming thing. I guess the rise of consoles with the PlayStations and the Xbox. Do you think that actually kills strategy games?
I'm going to add to what Adam has said there as the reasons why, and I'm going to bring in as well Xbox Live. Because before Xbox Live, which I think was the Xbox 360, I think there wasn't a particularly effective and stable way for console gamers to get online to play multiplayer games before Xbox Live came along. So if you wanted to, which is why you talk about Quake from '96 as like esports, it was online, it was PC. Starcraft, it was online, it was PC. The early skirmishes in Command and Conquer, it was PC, and I think that it was much easier to get involved in that multiplayer scene via PC and via modem than it was through very, very difficult systems. There was no system before you had Xbox Live which allowed you to have effective online play with consoles, and with that, and Halo came out at the same time, and there was a massive rush for people to pay for Xbox Live in order to be able to get online and play Halo online with their friends. And I think as soon as you had this move from consoles being in the living room, couch co-op or whatever, play parties, and when you had the ability to then move beyond your living room and play with other people everywhere in the world, the convenience of the consoles coupled with the ability to go online and play took the wind out the sails for PC strategy games, because it's so much easier to go and play Call of Duty and Medal of Honor or racing games or whatever than it was to play Command and Conquer, Starcraft, anything like that.
Do you guys remember the game called the thing called Game Spy? That was like live for PCs, and it worked so badly. Like, it was horrible.
I do. Whereas most PC games, when we're talking about RTS games from a multiplayer perspective, they had the client. They had the multiplayer client built into the game. It was part of the game. So you would go into the game and you would launch your multiplayer games from there with all of your network settings and all that kind of stuff. So you didn't need a third party like you did with GameSpy. But the ease and the simplicity of Xbox Live is the reason why we saw this explosion in consoles, which took away from the PC audience. That would be my... And by all means, somebody in the comments tell me I'm wrong. I'm happy to be told I'm wrong. It doesn't happen very often.
With the PC at the time, you basically, for most games, either you had to play host to host or someone would have to have a server, right? I used to actually have a Quake 3 server, for example. Well, that's unheard of, right? Nowadays, you sort of rely on the companies themselves to host all the multiplayer stuff.
Well, I think most things are through Steam, aren't they? Most multiplayer experiences are, because we know how popular Steam is as a PC gamer, and most. When I was talking to the Sanctuary Shattered Sun devs, their multiplayer can be run through Steam because it makes sense, because all your players are there. So just use Steam servers.
Steam became popular because people wanted to play Counter-Strike, right? That basically all Steam was when it was released was a launcher for Half-Life and Counter-Strike and stuff, and Team Fortress Classic. It wasn't actually a store. It was just a way of you connecting to your mates to play those games.
Okay, let's move on. I wanted to talk about Total Annihilation. Now, was this when you was in the field, Drexy, or did you ever play Total Annihilation?
I think it was on Sunday morning after I came back from the field.
Right. Okay.
Total Annihilation to chill out, listen to the Orb and playing Total Annihilation.
And you mentioned a game, Dark Reign, The Future of War, earlier in this episode. Now, they came out in the same year, they came out in 1997, both did, which was the year before Starcraft came out and eclipsed them both. But Total Annihilation spawned Supreme Commander. It was by the same developer, and went on to be this other subgenre of RTS, the large scale, which is where Sanctuary comes in as like the spiritual successor to those games. I actually preferred Dark Reign. I thought it was a superior title, and I think it just
hot takes. How would the hot takes?
Hot takes. I hate hot takes. In terms of what it did, in terms of the unit behaviors, you could essentially take a unit and you could customize you could tell it to patrol. I know you could do patrols in Total Annihilation, but you can actually give your unit specific behaviors. So patrol this area, and if you encounter an enemy, be passive or be aggressive. So you will continue to chase it. You could put them on just to auto explore, so they just go and explore the map for you. So a lot of the things which I think a lot of modern games are trying to bring in as quality of life features, such as being able to put units to say, just go and explore the map for me, or go and be aggressive or defend a particular area or whatever. That existed in 1997 with Dark Reign. They were doing it then. It's just, it was eclipsed by the scale. I love Total Annihilation. I played Total Annihilation more than I played Dark Reign, but I think that Dark Reign was actually a technically superior title. They were doing it then in 97, what people still can't do now.
This brings up an interesting question I want to ask you guys. Were there games like, Dark Reign that did certain things that didn't sort of get traction but should have, and maybe should be brought, not the actual games themselves, but certain styles of games or systems they had, or I just want to sort of see if you guys, this could be, dead air, but is there any games you can think of like that, or systems you can think from the 90s that should have survived the 90s but didn't?
I don't know. I think that most things, I can't think of anything which really died in the 90s and we never got again, because I think that there's just been an evolution ever since then. And this was really when all of the games that you play now, and I think you'd be hard pressed to pick a game that's been released in the last 5 years where you can't trace its lineage back to the 90s in strategy games. I don't think that you're going to be able to think of something where you say, well, actually, this is brand new. We've never experienced this before. So I don't think there's anything which was kind of never replicated. I couldn't give you concrete examples.
I think, well, the one example I can think of was 4X games, right? Because you had these big 4X games in the 90s, Master of Ryan, Civ. The only one that basically survived was Civ until the early 2000s. Then suddenly you had a re-emergence of 4X games, the 2010s. Whilst we say RTS died, they still sort of survived. They weren't as popular, but they didn't sort of die out. 4X pretty much died out for the whole of the 2000s.
Still here.
Yeah. I mean, it came back. Yeah, and RTS is making a comeback, right? Is this like music, right? I think the same thing happens with music, where I think like in the 90s, everyone was looking back to the 60s. And I feel even now, there's a lot of people looking back to the 90s and trying to emulate that. Does that happen? Does that happen in games? Is that just a human thing? Once you get to a certain thing, people start having such nostalgia almost for things that were like 30 years ago almost.
I think trends are cyclical, aren't they? You have this situation where things just go. I mean, I remember in the 90s when people were wearing flares. It's like it was in the 60s.
God, you should have seen some of the jeans I had. Yeah.
I can imagine, and you're probably the same thing with any kind of pop culture, that things are in vogue, they fall out, and then they come back again. And I guess that's perhaps the same with games as well. But in the 2000s, you had Galactic Civilizations as well. You had Galciv was in the 2000s, wasn't it? That's a game you've mentioned before.
Galciv 1 would have been the 90s, I think. That was
2000,
on OS2.
2003.
Really? No, because it was on OS2, I believe, the first Galciv.
Galciv 2003, Galciv 2, 2006.
Oh, right.
Sword of the Stars, you mentioned that one before. That was 2006.
2000, yeah. Yeah, there was a few. I mean, that's Sword of the Stars actually is the game that got me into 4X games. I have to admit, on the podcast, whilst I did play the Civ games, I actually never played Master of Magic or Master of Orions in the 90s. I sort of missed that. It's something I came back to later because I got into 4X games. And I thought, and started like finding out where did this sort of come from. And I sort of went back to those games in the early 2010s. So I actually missed some of the biggest 4X games that sort of influenced the genre.
I don't think that they went away completely. I think you just found that they dropped off, and now and then they came back in the 2010s. But that's probably the same with many genres. Like city builders. If you think we had SimCity, and then SimCity 2000, and then whatever SimCity 3 or whatever, but then nothing much until we got City Skylines, and now we've got Metropolis.
Sims took over, right?
Yeah. So, but now we're seeing city builders come back. So maybe it is just this idea that we have these cycles.
Yeah, but one subgenre of strategy games that basically is developing more and more since then is grand strategy games. When I look at the list, like they came out in late 90s, and there's more and more and more of them basically each year. I would say this is like exception from this strategy.
I mean, it's very paradox. I can't think of a grand strategy game. I think Paradox basically invented that genre. I'm sure, like Al said, there are previous ones.
I would say that Total War series is grand strategy.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But I think the RTS combat obviously puts off like people who are into grand strategy games, I would say. It's sort of like a mid sort of. It has a grand strategy thing, but I think for a lot of players, the RTS combat probably put them off.
I would struggle to say that Total War was grand strategy, but that's just me. Guys, we've covered a lot of stuff here, and I am conscious of time. Looking at the 270-ish strategy games released between 1990 and 1999, can you all give me one or two games that you think are incredible from then, but also, if you like, what are worth checking out now despite the elapsed time?
I would definitely say Heroes of Might and Magic 3 with the HD mod. I'm just thinking of what plays well today. Is that what you're really asking?
If something plays well today, great, because that means that people aren't going scratching around for things. So but just what was your best game from the 90s, and then also what do we have which you can still play now, which is worth picking up?
Master of Orion 1 is quite difficult. Well, it's a very janky, but there is someone's doing a newer version in Java called Remnants of the Precursors. I would actually check that out. If you ever want to know what a 4X game is, I would play Master of Orion stroke Remnants of the Precursor, because that game is so pure that it's distilled down to its basic elements of what a 4X game is, which sounds like, well, it sounds very simple, but that's almost the beauty of it, right? It's really hard to describe. It's like you'd think this is so simple, but it's so addictive. This is the whole one more turn thing, which 4X games are famous for. And I think this game there's no fluff. It's just the pure example of what a 4X game is. And if you lose any of those elements that are in Master of Ryan, I think you lose what a 4X game is. The thing with these 90s games is they're, like I'm saying, it's a pure experience. Modern games seem to want to add a lot of fluff in, like deck building and all this other fluff. And I think in a way we lost something on the way.
Yeah, I think the games was games like People were simpler back then, weren't they? It was a simpler time. It was pre 9/11. I think it was
all that rubbish. DLC, no DLC.
No, you got proper expansion packs. Exactly. Proper expansion packs. But one thing I do find quite interesting is the number of remasters that we've had as well of 90s games. You know, if you think you've got, the Age of Empires series, Command & Conquer, Starcraft, Warcraft, Homeworld. I mean, Homeworld was it just squeezed in 1999, and they did the full remastered collection for Homeworld. So I think that people still have, and maybe a lot of it is nostalgia bait, but also a lot of it is because the games were just incredible back then, and they're worth playing now. Adam, you can be excused from this because you were still a child in the 90s, but you still play games from the 90s now, like Heroes of Might and Magic and things like that.
Yeah. Heroes of Might and Magic, as I said, is a must play. I was wondering what I would advise to check out for people, and I would say there is this hidden gem called Grants. It was created by Monolith Software. The guys that are really known from Brave series and other type of games. And it looks really childish, but it's really clever puzzle/RTS games. And as a child, I played hell out of it. Like, basically, I found all the secrets, finish all the missions all the time. Like, on all difficulties, and if you can, and if you somehow manage to run it today, because it's really hard, I wholeheartedly advise you to do it, guys. It's a really good game.
I would say 2 games. Caesar 3, you can find an HD mod for it. It would probably hold up pretty well today. It's so unique too, and it's really indicative of the 90s strategy experience, that game. So I would say Caesar 3. And then I would probably say SimCity 2000. It would probably look pretty terrible, but in a...
Isn't there like an open... I'm sure there's like an open SimCity version. You know, I'm talking about these sort of free games.
Yeah.
There's like open...
like open TTD or whatever.
Yeah. Is there a Sims one? I'm pretty sure there must be.
I mean... You probably, but if you want, you can buy SimCity 2000 on Good Old Games for $250.
2 from me. The first one is a bit of a cheat because it's the Command & Conquer Remastered Collection. It's a game from 95 and 96, but it was remastered and it can be played on modern systems. And it is, I think that Command & Conquer is the quintessential 90s RTS game and well worth picking up and playing just because it is a phenomenal experience. And I mentioned Dark Reign earlier. There's a officially licensed remake called Dark Reign Redux, which is played in browser. I will drop it into the description for this episode. It's well worth checking out. It's janky as hell, as you can imagine, from a game from 1997. But when I talk about those quality of life components that people are struggling to put into RTS games now, Dark Reign had them in 97, so well worth taking a look at. Gentlemen, it's we're approaching an hour or so we'll call it a day there. Thank you very much, Adam. It's
thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day, and Joe and Drexy, gents. It's appreciated. I've been Al, and this has been the Critical Moves podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, do me a favor, hit all of them buttons, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Please, the algorithm gods. Come and visit us on our Discord, where Drexy will challenge you to a duel on esoteric strategy game knowledge, and he'll probably win. But if you go to criticalmovespodcast.com, that's the main website, and that's how you find all the ways to get in touch. our Discord, our social media. There's articles on there for different games, and we also put show notes on there. So if you don't want to listen to all of the episodes, you can have a quick read through and see what kind of crap we were talking about on previous episodes. So check us out, and thanks for listening. And I guess we'll see you next time. So thanks very much. Take it easy. Goodbye.
Testing.
Tested.
Dupa.
Did you not think to do the testing before you hit record?
I just check every time because that one time it didn't work out of nowhere. Remember, we had to record the episode.
Okay. Well, thank you for testing. Let's go.